Hey up internet, and welcome to On the Sofa Live. Okay, this is a story from The Canary. By Madison Wilden. Gaza Tribunal says Labour complicit in Israel's genocide and desecration of international law. The Gaza Tribunal have published their damning report today into British complicity in Israel's genocide on Gaza. Independent MP Jeremy Corbyn convened the Gaza Tribunal in September with two international law specialists. The tribunal heard testimony from lawyers, medical professionals, former Foreign Office officials, and Palestinians as it worked to determine the scale of the UK's complicity in the genocide in Gaza. The report reads, Britain's failure to meet its legal obligations has contributed to the mass killing of Palestinian civilians and the wholesale destruction of civilian objects, the desecration of international law, and the further erosion of Britain's status as a nation committed to the rule of law in the international arena. This report comes ahead of the May 2026 local elections, indicating it has potential to be a significant deterrent for voters across the country. Let's face it, compassionate people don't tend to tolerate being involved in the murder of tens of thousands of children. And this is it, isn't it? That's true, isn't it? Most people in this country, don't support genocide. They don't support war crimes. They don't support the killing of thousands of innocent civilians, many of them women and children. They don't support ethnic cleansing. And they don't support a government who allows that to happen. Not only allows that to happen, but it's been actively helping it to happen by training IDF soldiers, by sending spy planes from RAF Akrotiri, and by sending component parts for the jets that have been carrying out the bombings over Gaza. The Labour government have been actively complicit in this genocide, and it's all been recorded for people to see with their own eyes. People know this, and that's why Labour have fallen in the polls, and that's why Keir Starmer, his approval rating is at an all-time low. He's the most unpopular prime minister we've had for years, maybe even decades. The article goes on. Going further, the report subsequently recommends that the International Criminal Court, the ICC, conduct a thorough investigation into British complicity and our participation in the mass murder of Palestinians. Corbyn concluded that the UK government has been an active participant in Israel's horrific crimes. He tweeted this: "We held the Gaza Tribunal to expose the full scale of Britain's complicity in genocide. Our conclusion? The British government has been an active participant in one of the greatest crimes of our time. Read the full report below." And he included a link to the Gaza Tribunal. Corbyn on Gaza. We do not need permission to uncover the truth. Jeremy Corbyn initially put forward a bill in the House of Commons calling for a public inquiry into the UK's ongoing and significant involvement in Gaza. However, the bill was rejected. The government instead argued that there was no need for an inquiry, suggesting it would be unnecessary because there is no confusion about the nature of the UK's involvement. Well, you could argue that in one sense they're correct. There is no confusion about the nature of the UK's involvement. There is no need for an inquiry, suggesting it is unnecessary for an inquiry in one sense, because we all know that the UK has been involved. We know that they're complicit. It's all a matter of public record. There have been articles, there have been videos all over social media, including YouTube and TikTok, proving conclusively that the British government has been complicit in the war crimes and genocide of the Israeli government and the IDF. And we know this to be true. So that in one sense, they're right. The Labour government are right. There is no need for an inquiry because we know they're complicit. This can only be seen as a sign that Keir Starmer's government is fully aware of the UK's complicity and has no intention of addressing it. Nevertheless, Corbyn and others ploughed on, refusing to wait for permission from the government, affirming his hope that the tribunal's report will be a landmark contribution to seeking justice and a reliable source of evidence of our complicity for future generations. Corbyn stated, "Today, school children are taught about history's worst crimes against humanity. They are asked to reflect on how these crimes possibly could have occurred, and they learn the names of political figures that endorsed or enabled such atrocities. In the near future, our history books will shame those in our government who could have stopped the genocide in Gaza but facilitated it instead." Israeli co-author and human rights scholar Professor Neve Gordon provided a statement ahead of the launch today. The government's complicity in the genocide in Gaza has created a very dangerous precedent for our current moment. Indeed, we are already witnessing the fallout with Keir Starmer's immoral response to the illegal war of aggression in Iran. To ensure that never again does not become entirely meaningless, we must hold ministers and officials accountable for the government's complicity in the destruction of Gaza. Accountability is the most effective guard against the repetition of such crimes in the future. British government has failed. The report is likely to create a major inconvenient headache for Starmer's government, with its authors committing to work with the ICC to draw their attention to evidence presented in this report, including violations of international law and evidence of criminal complicity and implicating government ministers and officials, including those who have authorized the continuation of economic ties with Israel, as well as the commission of arms trades, arm transfers, and intelligence exchange. Furthermore, it calls on the government to allow an official, full, independent public inquiry into evidence collected in the report. This tribunal is unofficial, so it would require an official inquiry instructed by the government. Nevertheless, this will likely be blocked by pro-Israel Starmer and co, meaning public pressure will be essential to force an inquiry. So that's the thing. I don't think that this Labour government will launch an official inquiry anytime soon. But I'm hoping that this unofficial inquiry, led by Jeremy Corbyn, will eventually be used as evidence against Keir Starmer and the Labour government, and it is my hope that eventually Keir Starmer, David Lammy, and others in the on the front bench in the cabinet will face very real consequences. Will be held accountable for their crimes. Will be held accountable for their complicity. And at the very least, I'm hoping that they will face consequences in the ballot box. When it comes to the next general election, we can't allow them to get away with this. We need to vote these people out of office. We really do. I'm really hoping that the Green Party will, as Zach Polansky has promised, will replace the Labour. Will replace Labour. We could, very well end up with a Green Party government with Reform as the opposition. The Green Party, just as surely as the Green Party will replace Labour, I think Reform will replace the Tories. The Labour Party and the Tories are, they're done. They'll be consigned to the dustbin of history if there's any justice. The report published today reminds us that people must not wait for permission from the most powerful. The Gaza Tribunal cannot itself deliver justice. However, by documenting testimony, gathering evidence, and drawing attention to violations of international law, this report seeks to contribute to the growing global effort to secure accountability and justice for the Palestinian people. After all, when officials bury their heads in the sand, nothing disappears. It only makes them more complicit. I don't think I could have put it better myself.